So my name is Felicity. Actually, Felicity is my middle name. My birth certificate name, which I really never get called by, apart from sort of legal documents, is Sian Singh.
My name is Osea Kiprono, born and brought up in Kenya.
Well, since we're talking about names, so officially I have a split personality because it's Zeta in the professional arena, but Ajit is actually my real name, legal name. It is the name given to me by my father.
You share a time when a major setback in your business, career, or personal life that became a turning point. What shifted for you mentally, emotionally, or spiritually in that season?
Yes, thank you. That's a very interesting question. A major setback in my life. For instance, I immediately arrived to this country in around 2017. Work extremely hard in Australia. I used to live in countryside, like 200 kilometers away, and studying here in Adelaide. In the process, I did a lot of saving and decided I need to start investment. To invest in a business. I immediately started a business back in Kenya. You mentioned earlier on about the black tax. Without proper knowledge, I did my first business in Kenya, but unfortunately, it was, I invested in real estate, built several houses, and started to be an investor. In the process, immediately COVID came. And when the COVID came, everything closes, including my business, and by then I was having a lot of servicing some loan. So it became difficult on my side, and I say no. Because of mentality of not giving up, I say, if this one has failed, let me start another one. I started another businesses. I say, because my father was a driver, I said, let me invest in transport business. That one I failed terrible, like the other one was better. I failed. so in the process of navigating through, I say I've started the first one, the second one, wow. I started having the conversation within myself and saying, no, it looked like this is not mine. I need to quit what I was doing. But guess what? The same mentality of not giving up, I started the third business. But as we speak, the third one is doing really, really well. So
Not bad. Staring to drink right there.
So I want to associate myself with probably everybody. Maybe at some point you are in a process of you are doing something, but you look like you are not. You are not like you are stuck in. You are stagnating. My message is probably in my personal experience. Don't quit and don't give up. Navigate on a different way. Thank you.
So in regards to this question that I was posed, which is actually a really good question. If you'd asked me that question about 5 years ago, I would probably give you a different response to what I'm going to give you tonight. Probably the most difficult moment occurred almost 2 years ago now. So for those who know me, previously I was the CEO of Women's Legal Service. I dedicated quite a substantial portion of my professional life to building that organisation. So when I first started, it was like 5 people with about $500,000 worth of annual funding. When I left, we had a team of almost 40 with $5 million annual funding.
Wow.
The parting was not good. That's putting it quite simply. But for me, probably the biggest thing is that when I left, I had to do a personal reckoning with myself, because I'd allowed it to become my primary identity. I didn't know who Zeta was without reference to that job, to that title, to that workplace. And I had to figure out who I was. And that was probably one of the most difficult journeys that I had to go on. I also, as part of that journey, I had to find out what mattered to me. And I was very fortunate at that time that a little boy came into my world, which helped me to then realise that as a young person coming from a refugee background, you're kind of coerced by your parents to focus on one form of success, which is to build a successful career, hopefully make lots of money. But that's not, I realised for me, that's not success. That kind of success left so many important parts of my life, made me neglect so many important parts of my life. And don't get me wrong, I've had some very amazing experiences because I have been so focused on career, but that meant that I neglected important things like establishing and maintaining relationships with important people, whether that's family, your family that you're born into, your chosen family, and friends. I'd also lost my sense of spirituality in that process. Well, that was regulated to being secondary in terms of what I thought was success. And I also realised through my pursuit of what I thought was success, I actually handed a lot of power over. I encourage you to think about what it is that you want in your life and to realise that life is not a linear experience. Allow yourself to deviate from the path that you're comfortable with. Allow yourself to experience all of the different things that life can offer. It's not about the success, it's not about the Mac mansion, it's not about the title, the job title. There is so much to life more than that. And particularly now that I'm older, I realise the things that actually matter aren't what related to my work. The things that matter are a sense of connection and a sense of purpose.
I started off became a Christian when I was 19, really, and I grew up in a great Christian home, but really things came together for me when I was 19. And from that moment on, I really just wanted to live for Jesus. And I was quite a quiet, and I still am quite a quiet, shy, reserved, introverted person. But when I came to know him, I just started to wanting to go to church and engage with people and become very, a bit more outward focused. So from that time on, I really just enjoyed church community and learning about God and really living with him. And I eventually got married and married someone who became a pastor. And anyway, amidst all that, I also did a Bachelor of Urban and Regional Planning. So I wanted to get into the urban planning world and worked at the Prospect Council for a couple of years. And I always had this wrestle with wanting to have a career in that sort of world, but then also I'm not really a kid person, so I didn't really think much about having kids, but I felt like that was the kind of thing you get married and have kids. But I really had to wrestle through, well, should I have kids, or why do I have kids? So I started working at the council for a few years and I enjoyed it, but I could feel myself going down this track of, I'll go into these beautiful houses in Prospect and I'm like, oh, these are so beautiful, and one day I'm going to have a house like this, and I could feel myself going into that sort of materialistic kind of track. And yet I had another hand where I loved ministry and church world and being with people and serving, and I was married and I wasn't very domesticated, and so all these things kind of came to a bit of a head, and I made the decision to resign from my job and just work casually for them, and I spent the other time just focusing on being at home and being with my husband, but also being involved in serving with the church. So then fast forward a little bit, I ended up having kids. I had 4 of them, very close together in 4.5 years, and it was a struggle, I found, having children, because I wasn't naturally a kid person, but they are beautiful and I loved having them. And I also made the choice to stay at home with them as well, because I just really wanted to focus on that, on being with them. But the real, I guess, setback, and I hate calling it a setback because it wasn't really a setback, but I look at it now as I've been thinking about what has been one of the significant setbacks in my life, and that we moved to Dallas. My husband studied a master's degree over there, and we took the family over there when the youngest was 4 and the oldest was 8, and we were there for 4 years. And we made a decision to homeschool over there because we're a little bit scared about American public schools, and really didn't know anyone over there. So I made the choice to homeschool when we got there, and part of it was just so we could kind of protect them and keep them safe, and also part of me wanted to get to know them more. But the setback was that I really failed at homeschooling. I don't think I was very good at it at all. And I spent 1.5 years really struggling in that world of being, and it wasn't my children, it was the commitment to them full time, not having any community around me because we didn't know anyone, being at home, that was what was really hard. And I really felt like that was a setback and a bit of a failure. And I remember spending many times in my closet crying out to God, please help me, what am I doing? Thankfully my kids were fine, and they still learned and they enjoyed it, but I just found that, and part of that was because what was wrapped up for me was my identity. I lost my identity when I started homeschooling because I no longer was able to have people over as I used to. I wasn't doing visible acts of service, if you like, in the community. I was at home with my kids and helping them read and making crafts with them, and no one sees that. No one.
We have a few people here that are homeschooling.
That's right. I know, you can relate to that. And I really struggled with my identity in that, and being okay with that was who I was in that season of life, and that was all I felt like that was all I was, but that was significant, I guess, in that time. But and so my shift was realizing, okay, it's who I am in God, it's not what I'm doing, and I'm investing in these lives. So
yeah. Thank you for sharing. In moments of uncertainty, whether in business, leadership, or whatever, even in relationship, which you guys have talked about, sort of how do you navigate the tension between staying strong and being vulnerable? And what does that look like?
Understanding your limitation in that aspect, I can say, because in what I have navigated in my life, I know and I understand my limitation. But instead of focusing on the limitation aspect of it, is focusing on the strength and capitalizing and building on that. Because everybody is gifted different. I might be good in planning, because sometimes you might end up somebody is good in planning, but he doesn't good in thinking. So if you combine all those things, you can get a very, very, very good outcome. So if I reflect, sometimes there is a lot of challenges going on through even us when we landed in this country as an international student. Sometimes you come from the village and the second destination in Australia. Arriving in this country is not the way we see it. It is not the way we think. But in that aspect, instead of giving up, you capitalize on the strength. Lucky we are. I wish in 2016, when I arrived in this country, I got an opportunity like coming to such a wonderful defense like this one. And those areas you can start getting networking, get some friends. In those limitations that you are going through, you can let someone who have navigated through. What I know most of the people, what has been a major challenge and major setback, sometimes you understand, but you doesn't want to open up. If your weakness is resume, capitalize on that. Look for someone who knows how to do it, how to write, because sometimes you think the resume is the one which is the best, but maybe that is the one that denies you an opportunity.
That's really vulnerable.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
so being honest and understanding your limitation.
One of the most painful lessons I've learned in regards to that is being careful about who you choose to confide in, who you seek guidance from, because not everyone that you know, or everyone that you feel that you're close to, is in a position to give you appropriate guidance into some of the difficulties that you face. So you really have to be discerning about who you approach for guidance, and you really need to analyse what your issue is, and look at in your network, and if you don't have anybody in your network that fits, that has the necessary skills or attributes to be able to guide you effectively, then you really do then need to look about getting outside mentors who can then assist you in guiding you with whatever your issue is. And I say that this is really important because as a young person growing up, I relied a lot on my parents for guidance. But with hindsight, I've realised that some of the things that I sought guidance from them for example, I'll just bring up one, buying a house. That they may not, even though they had great intentions and they wished the very best for me, they weren't necessarily the right people to go to and get information from, guidance from. But as a young person, you kind of think that the people who are in your orbit are the only source of information or guidance.
And ask you, why is that? Why wouldn't you go for your parents to ask for help?
Oh God. Just as well.
No, I don't mean necessarily like your parents, but
but I'm thinking in general. Because one of the things that I've realised, and even from having my own nieces, is that each generation, although there are similarities in the issues and commonalities in some of the issues that we face, the reality is that life changes so quickly. The external environment in which we operate changes so quickly. And I feel like the older that I've got, looking at what young people now face, that environment is very, very different from the environment I grew up. And when they come to my age, the environment that they're going to be dealing in, operating in, is going to be vastly different from what I've been dealing in. And whilst I acknowledge that I might have some wisdom that I can pass on, say, to my nieces, the younger generation, that information, though, is based on my experience at the time that I was, their age, which is very different to what they're facing now. And I feel like in terms of ensuring that you're acting with all of the right information at your disposal and making an informed decision about whatever issue that you're dealing with or grappling with, you need current information. That information needs to be rooted in what's happening now, not what happened 20 years ago, 30 years ago, because that landscape is very different. They might be able to tell you, I'm thinking of my parents now, or even older people that I still look up to as mentors. They might be able to tell you about how they overcome things, and you can take stuff from that. But the reality of the situation you're facing now is very different. The challenges, and like for a lot of young people now, the issues is housing affordability, finding secure long-term employment. Like when I first started working, it was still kind of the norm that you were in your employment for a really long time, that concept of loyalty. Whereas now, if I'm talking to a young person, I'm like, you should, when you're in your second year, you should be looking at what your opportunities are to move sideways or to move up. Like you would not stay in one organisation like I did for 12 years. I think in this day and age, that would be unusual. And if potential employers saw your resume, they might have questions about why you didn't move. That might be viewed as a negative. Whereas when I was growing up, it was a positive if you showed that stability. That was seen as stability, loyalty.
Really good perspective, and very different. I'll
just add quickly to that, because mine's similar in terms of that vulnerability and strength. Like I think I find that I'm most vulnerable. I'm going through something difficult. My first go-to will be I very much internally process things a lot, and I am grateful that I've been able to do that a lot in my faith and with God, and really kind of process that a lot with Him. And then I generally go out to talk to my husband or seek out those other wise people and that wise counsel. And I think having numerous people that you can find counsel from, not just that one person. I've heard differently to have handful of different people that are giving different insights that know you in different ways, and that you sometimes know are going to give you a certain answer, but know that you need to have that answer from that person. And so, but for me, I can't go there straight away. I need to be vulnerable on my own, and then the vulnerability comes, and the strength. I find more strength when I'm able to talk it through with other people once I've started to process it myself and kind of step away from it a little bit. Because then I find if I'm too vulnerable with someone that I don't trust, then they can lead to all sorts of places. So, and I've seen it with my kids as well. And
thank you. Can I just add a bit though? The other thing too is sometimes when you've sought guidance from other people, that small inner voice of yours says something else. Directs you in a different way than everybody else is directing you. When I look at my life and where I have regrets is when I haven't listened to that little voice.
Yeah.
Because I've just kind of been like, well, everybody else is saying I need to do X, Y, Z, I'll just go over there. So have faith. Sometimes when you sought guidance from other people, there may be that thing in your heart that's like, nah, that's not for me. I need to be doing something else. So have faith in yourself as well. Because sometimes you sought guidance, you've thought about it, but the message in your heart is telling you something different. And sometimes it can be scary listening to that message because it requires a leap of faith. But if that's what's truly inside your heart in those really, really quiet moments, then that's something important that you need to follow.
I'm going to skip to that question, and I want you to continue to actually answer this. So what is, just going based on what you're saying, around your inner voice and things like that. So obviously, like, we wrestle with doubt. And so in that moment where that inner critic gets really loud, right? We've talked about hearing those small voice saying, do it, you can do it, right? But then there's the other voice, the inner critic, right? That's there. So, like, what do you do to shift back into a thriving, courageous mindset? What is it that you do? Because, somebody told you something, like, for me, I'll be vulnerable. It is challenging to be able to put on an event. It's really, really challenging because it's never the one time it could be really good, then the next time it could look different. So what is it like? So when I look at all of that, I tend to track everything by impact rather than by numbers. That then kind of helps me throughout this whole day. I was like, I hate this. But this is the vulnerable. This is a vulnerable moment for me. And, you choose to be strong or vulnerable. So this is definitely a moment of vulnerability. But it's by hearing, it's about impact, hearing my friends, hearing my tribe, hearing all these different people saying, you know what? You've done the best that you can, and actually drowning that inner critic for me with those voices. But it's loud. What do you do?
Okay, for me, it's taken a while. So I'm going to say this is something probably, oh my God, I'll just say it. I'm in my 40s. So this is something that I learned in my 40s. But if you can learn it younger, I think power to you. I wish I knew this stuff earlier. I'm going to digress and say, I don't always think the inner critic is a bad thing. I think it's about how much power, what power and what role you give to the inner critic within you. The reason why I don't think it's always a bad thing, because I think the inner critic plays a role in asking you to stop and make sure that you've considered everything. It's useful in that sense. However, if you allow it to stop you from doing things because of fear of failure, and I'm going to put up my hand, one of my weaknesses is fear of failure. Fear of...
I think many of us can resonate.
Not like, even now, I'm going to put up my hand. I sometimes, read biographies about people, or, see articles about people that do really well. And I'm like, what have I done in my life? What have I been doing? I haven't done anything of significance. And for me, I'm in the stage where I'm really looking at what my legacy will be, what I want to leave behind. That's kind of the stage where I am at now. Whereas when I was younger, I was all about breaking barriers, being the best. That was my focus. But I'm at a stage where I'm like, okay, I really want to make some sort of positive impact in this world. And how am I going to do that? What strengths can I use to contribute to making some sort of positive impact in the world, in the environment that I'm in, and creating a legacy where there will be other people that will come behind me to continue amazing works. And so I think the inner critic can play a role in just making sure. For me, it's about keeping my ego in check. So the inner critic plays a useful role about ensuring that I don't get too egotistical. So it's not always a bad thing, but I think you also just need to make sure, if you do find yourself in a situation where the inner critic is getting really loud, that you provide space for that quiet voice. And sometimes that takes you stopping, taking a deep breath. For me, I find that I'm actually an introvert, so I actually like
You just found that out.
No. I like being alone. I like doing quiet things. So being at home, pottering around, whether it's cooking, cleaning, reading, is kind of like my domain. Coming to stuff like this, I need to psych myself up, believe it or not. But so for me, particularly when I'm going through those periods of vulnerability, it's about ensuring that I go into a place where I'm safe and just take time to almost withdraw from the world. And for those of you who have a strong faith base, it's also a really useful time to just touch base with God and sit in solitude with God. If you don't believe in God, whatever your belief system or whatever system gives you strength, it's about just tapping into that source of strength. And often in those quiet moments, the answers to grievances, dilemmas, challenges that you're facing comes. And then it's about you then making the decision to follow through. And I think that's probably where some of us fail, including myself sometimes, is in the follow through. We know, we hear, we recognise what we should do, but then the follow through can be difficult.
I really love what you've shared.
Thank you. To add what my learned colleague mentioned on my side, to pay attention, because if we pay attention, our critic, it becomes too much, and I can associate with myself. When I was starting the process of coming to Australia, I had someone who came criticize that you will not even get visa. It's a very difficult process. If you can reflect and see your family, you can't even manage to have a bank statement, because for us to come as international student, you have to have a very big bank statement. He kept doing that, but I didn't pay attention. When I moved in the next year, I reported I've got a visa. I say, oh, I told you, this young man is hardworking, and he's on me sometimes. And it's, if we pay attention, sometimes we can lose focus, even as we navigate in our life. There is a lot of, even in family life, sometimes there is someone who doesn't believe in a family, and all the time you hear negative vibes about the family. So The answer is, I said, no, to give pay attention, because if you pay attention, it will be your daily bread all the time. If you have a challenge, you say no. Someone mentioned, you start validating. So don't give pay attention. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think my inner critic often comes when I start comparing myself with other people, or looking around, social media, or even just friends and things like that, and I start to doubt what I should be doing, or what I'm not doing and not doing good enough, or when I'm about to organise something, it's that doubt. And so I think it's in that comparison, and so that's when that critic comes, and I think I have to bring it back to, okay, this is how God has made me, this is what I can offer. And we're all different, everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, but it's a bit of a process, so I think that's how I usually come about that.
Yeah, comparison is a thief, isn't it? It's a thief of goals, dreams, it's a thief of your identity. I get that. So as the last question, it's really more at words to your younger self, right? So if you could sit across from your younger self, before the setbacks, the breakthroughs and the growth, what would you say? What truth or encouragement do you wish you had known earlier? You got it.
I think I would say to my younger self to take more moments to just be present, I think, in the moment. My mum was sick for a lot of my teenage life, and she eventually died when I was 27, but she was in and out of hospital a lot, and I felt like I lived a lot of suffering in my home, which deepened my faith a lot. But I think I wasn't very present with her, and I regret that. And so I think I would say just to be a lot more present where I am, not to always be looking to the next thing or wanting the next stage in my life. And I think that's part of growing up, but to also just enjoy. I loved being at uni, I loved school, I loved just to cherish the stage that you're in, if you're in that final year of uni or whatever, just to enjoy those last moments, and to make the most of that.
For me, trust in the process, don't fear to take the risk, and believe in your dreams.
As I said, be quick. Mine is simply to my own self be true. If I reflect on my life, if I was true to who I am as a person, true to what I'm passionate about, I might have taken a different journey in life. So to their own self, be true. A lot of decisions I've made have been influenced by others rather than necessarily myself.
Well, thank you guys so much for sharing and being vulnerable at such time. And I've definitely, for myself, I've taken a lot in. I really have. That's why the time was running. I wasn't looking at it.